Welcome to 17 Minutes of Science. My name is Zahra Kashi. I'm a technical solution scientist within Vivo Biosystems. It's good to be back. And it's especially wonderful when we have an opportunity to speak with someone that we have talked to in the past and catch up with their work today. So I'm really delighted and honored to welcome back to 17 Minutes of Science our guest today, Dr. Zahra Kashi. And we're gonna catch up with Kashi Labs is how we frame our conversation today. We talked with Zahra last May in 2020, kind of in the earlier days of the pandemic. And so it's fun to circle back with her now. So Zahra is the founder and CEO of Kashi Labs, which is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. And Dr. Kashi is a board certified molecular immunohematologist, and she has many years of experience in clinical laboratories. In her laboratory, Kashi Labs is a CLIA accredited laboratory, and it is one of the largest COVID test providers in the state of Oregon. So they have had a critical role for the health of our whole state this last year. We're delighted she's taken a few minutes to catch up. So Zahra, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Thank you so much.
We know it's been a crazy year. We were just talking about how that is in the moments before live. So I wanted to start off by saying that, as I mentioned, when we met last year, we were only several months into this whole pandemic, but now here we are a year and a half later. Lots has changed. We have a lot of tests. There are vaccines out there. There may be even this treatment coming from Merck, but there's also still a lot of high infection rates and new variants. So tell us what life has been like at Kashi Labs. What's the day-to-day? How have you been adapting?
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate the question, and it's really the life at the laboratory has been quite parallel, with the peaks and troughs that we see in COVID-related healthcare as a whole. And it's very unpredictable. It's quite difficult to plan ahead. So what we have done in order to overcome the uncertainties, we just have made that just as a part of the routine part of the laboratory business. We have intertwined various different technologies and technologists with not only run the rest of the laboratory, but also have a focused attention on COVID. So during the peak time, we have more trained staff to attend the incoming flood of samples. And during the trough, there are many other obligations that we have to attend for the non-COVID related testing that we do. So it's been a trial and a fair amount of, I wouldn't say trial and error, probably is not the right term, but rather aiming for and try to target. But then if it didn't hit the target, we would shift very quickly in order to not lose focus and most importantly, not elongate the turnaround time from, we are quite proud to say that we have been consistently staying on our promised turnaround time of the no later than the next day. So it's been challenging, as it has been for everyone. It's been the unpredictability has been probably the most challenging, but like I said, you conform to it, as I am sure the universe has conformed to this variety of oscillation of this virus and the impact of this virus, I should say. The world has been challenged, and I think somehow we find a way to overcome the challenge to the best of our ability. And at our lab, quite frankly, it's been challenging. It's been the same, and we have been finally able to, I would dare say, perfect the situation to the needs of the lab testing on not only COVID, but the non-COVID and areas of our testing. So
have you been able to keep up with the demand with your staffing? Have you had to expand? I mean, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and that you may have times when you need all hands on deck for the COVID side of the business, but then you shift people around.
We have had a fair amount of cross training that that we had to go through. Just how else do you plan? It's by cross training, by maintaining staff members, and by separating some of the folks into other tasks and focusing them while hiring new ones to focus on COVID only and train them, moving forward for a variety of different services that are relevant to COVID, not just human testing, but some of our other tests that we perform in conjunction with, but in the context of COVID, such as environmental testing and whatnot. So yeah, we've had to, the good news is that we didn't have to lay people off. That was the best part. Even though the demand fluctuated, we were fortunate to add responsibilities. Some of the environmental testing got added. Some of the other departments that were established during this pandemic. So we were able to shuffle people around and shift, change the shifts and in order to acclimate and in order to provide the service within the promised turnaround time. It has been challenging, but fortunately it was settled eventually, and to what we believe everybody is now comfortable and knows when there is a peak of COVID sample testing, and everybody's prepared, and we just have to make the necessary immediate changes, but everybody's trained and ready for it. So
thinking about Delta in particular, since it seemed like at least us in Oregon had a bit more advanced warning that might be coming our way when we were watching, of course, the world, and then other parts of the United States where that was blooming up quickly. Were you able to sort of get ahead of that in looking around at how it was progressing elsewhere?
We certainly have, and we have brought on board a rapid testing that does detect the variant. In addition to sequencing is not a rapid test by any stretch of imagination, and neither that really the depth of sequencing information is of any diagnostic use at this time, at least. A lot of it is for epidemiological investigation, and so those are being done by the state health department and so forth. But for us, we certainly can do the sequencing, but that's not for the purpose of diagnosis. But we were able to bring some of the faster turnaround not rapid tests, but PCR based, but we can determine the variant. So those have been quite helpful to for our own knowledge and often to somehow pre-warn the group that this is a Delta variant and whatever needs to be the further cautionary. At this time, from a diagnostic purpose, there is really no, to my knowledge at least, there is no known benefit to a clinician, whether it's Delta variant or not, in terms of treatment modality. But yeah, we forefronted that from the get-go. Started sequencing last year. A lot of it was for internal purposes of when we had a discussion with any of our I want to say client, because patients often we don't interact with patients, but various clinicians, if they are interested, they've been reaching out to us. And but the quicker tests are quite useful if somebody really wants to know if they have a certain variant in their environment, and they've been reaching out to us from time to time asking, hey, can you tell me if it's a Delta variant or any other variant? And yes, we have the capability for that. And it's been good.
It feeds into a great segue into the next question, which is when we spoke last time, the beginning of all this, it was harder to get access to testing. There was a lot of scrambling as people were trying to do that. But now, of course, there's many more options. Can you, for our viewers and listeners today, just refresh the list of what's out there and what Kashi services?
Certainly. So what's out there? Quite exactly right. I mean, thankfully, there has been an expansion of availability of tests, and that's a good news. The fundamental of testing still goes back to whether it's a molecular test, meaning the nucleic acid of the virus is being targeted, or if it's an antigen test, which is the antigens that are expressed on the the viral virus is going to be detected. But some of them come in a high throughput format, some come in a lower throughput, some come in a home-based testing. So a garden variety of them, but the principle of testing hasn't changed, obviously. It's either PCR or nucleic acid-based testing, or it's an antigen testing. And of course, everybody is aware of the antibody test. That's still, an available test everywhere. And the utilization, I think it's been so far underutilized just simply because it requires, at least for the most part, it requires blood collection, which is a challenge. And B, I think for most part, from a diagnostic purpose, it is not, people want to know, do I have COVID? Do I have COVID? Well, testing antibody is not going to tell them. So those are reasons probably that have led to this underutilization of this. Manufacturers have spent millions and millions of dollars to develop these. And I don't know exactly what this, the sale of these kind of reagent was over time for them, but I commend them, their enthusiasm. So it's an available tool. Some people use it to see if they've had the virus in the past, but they still remain, questionable in using them because, human immune response is going to obviously be variable between individuals. And for most part, it is still being investigated. What is the duration of this natural immunity, So those are things to consider. And people have jumped the gun from time to time to, well, if I just do my antibody testing, I'm not going to need the vaccine. Well, that's not exactly how it works. In fact, FDA was completely against, and they sent their directives that should not be used for such. And I wholeheartedly agree with that from a immunological perspective. So, but the tests remain still the three types: the antibody test, the antigen test, and the nucleic acid test. But there's a garden variety of them, including at-home testing and various devices. It was. I dare saying that this was probably one of the positive takeaways from 2020, from the pandemic, was this diversity of not just the testing, but how the biotech companies were so prompt to come to life and create something that is, at the end of the day, is a life-saving mission. Yeah, granted, it's also money. I get that, but if you have to make money, no matter whether you sell widget or you sell science. It doesn't. So money is not, I don't think, it's not necessarily the sole focus of any biotech environment to just, I'm doing this because I want to make money. No, money is a necessity to keep the payroll going, but it's not the drive behind. So I applaud all the manufacturers to what they have done. And there have been a ton of them out, but the principle of the test is the same. We offer the antibody test. Rarely anybody is interested in it, but we keep that in case for some of our clients want their patient be tested. And we certainly have been continually offering the variant testing as well as the PCR test, which is our basic all the time. We never really go down the path of antigen testing because we have the Holy Grail here. So we never really found the necessity of bringing that in-house. We've got a number of these quick rapid tests just sitting around if anybody needs them in an emergency situation. But we are a PCR-based lab, so for all practical purposes, that's what we solely offer in terms of from diagnostic purpose to just whether the person has COVID or not.
I wonder if the antibody tests will be more useful in the years ahead.
That may very well be indeed, as we learn more and more about not only the behavior of the virus, but also culminated data. I mean, data will be very telling in the years to come. And I agree with you. So we'll have a lot more to celebrate in terms of, what is invested today and to use them down the road. Yeah.
Yes, you are so right about that. We, I think, have all settled in and buckled up to realize we're on a bit of a long ride here. All of these tools may have relevance at different points along the way as the data grows. But I think the antibody one is fascinating and is the one we stand to gain a lot of knowledge, as you say, in the coming years, especially with the, I guess, increasing sample size of individuals who have been vaccinated and had a breakthrough infection. And that combo platter seems to be very interesting. Immunologic.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. In our last minute, because there it goes, 17 minutes. Tell us, actually 45 seconds. Tell us what you've been doing for you in the last year that has brought you joy, that has helped you shut your brain off from this. And
hiking personally, but also really considering, the positive. Looking for silver lining is my nature. In every catastrophe, I honestly believe there is something there. And I've been digging into, on a personal note, aside from a physical, going out the mountains, I've been digging into how you make lemonade out of lemon, if you will. And, with the advancement of healthcare in particular, and being in a healthcare industry, I've been just looking at how we can innovate something that will, the COVID, its sudden socioeconomic impact that it had, and it has left many stones for all of us who are in healthcare industry or not, but in particular for us, how to not necessarily capitalize, but how to make this a greater connection for the next, for the next time that we as a healthcare industry can contribute to the patient safety in a greater way, in a more positive, I guess, make a more positive impact. So it's been a challenging time, to be sure, but I've been looking to see what are, for instance, we all hate masks, but we all also recognize mask has been, somehow preventing this droplet from, a lot of people say, well, I didn't get flu last year. Well, there was a reason for that. So that's lemonade in a lemon I'm talking about. I've been using my time in innovating our work and really focusing on well-being of myself and every human who can benefit from something, and in particular in the context of environmental testing, I've been quite entrenched in that and very invested in it, and not just for COVID testing, but environment has a lot of other things that's introducing. So it's been an awakening, and I think the time is right. People now recognize and understand that that is just sitting there awaiting, attacking us. So this is a good time for us to put our mind together and move forward.
that is an excellent way to sum up that. And hopefully you have had time in the woods to think that when you have a little more headspace. I couldn't agree more. Well, Zahra, thank you so much for taking the time today out of what is clearly a very ongoing busy time to update us on your important work. And we greatly appreciate all that you're doing in the state of Oregon and beyond to help support us in our
Many
wellness
thanks.
to navigate this.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much, Sarah.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.